Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's lecture on deployment scenarios for Palo Alto Networks Firewall. My name is Zubair, and I'm excited to discuss how these firewalls can be effectively implemented in various environments to enhance the security. As you know, Palo Alto Networks has established itself as a leader in cybersecurity by offering solutions that protect against advanced threats. Understanding the deployment scenarios for their firewalls is crucial for improving organizational security posture. Now, the first thing that we should know is what is a Palo Alto firewall. I hope you all know. Now, to begin, let's define what a Palo Alto firewall is. Palo Alto firewalls are considered next generation firewalls, which means they go beyond traditional firewalls by integrating advanced security features like application awareness, threat intelligence, DNS filtering, URL filtering, and much more. All this while maintaining the high performance. Okay, so they are not only capable of blocking the incoming threats but also of inspecting outgoing traffic for malicious traffic or malicious behavior. And let's discuss also the key features of Palo Alto Networks firewalls. So as you can see on screen, these are app ID, user ID, content ID, and URL filtering. We'll discuss briefly each one of them one by one. So let's start with the what do you say, the app ID. All right, the first one is the app ID, which is also called the application ID. This feature allows the firewall to identify applications regardless of ports protocols, enabling more precise policy enforcement. Like in the legacy firewalls, we used to define by ports and protocols. But in the next gen firewalls, now we use it doing identifying the application behavior, like you have the signatures of the applications. Okay, so then you have the next one is the user ID. This associates users and identities with network traffic, providing granular control on user roles rather than IP addresses. Now, in previous legacy networks, what we used to do is we would have a host uh, object of the address. Okay, so we have a computer where a user will log in. This computer will get an IP of 10.1.1 dot say something, say 1/32, and we would apply the policy on this IP address or maybe the subnet itself, right? Now, in today's network, what we do is we identify the user itself, and tomorrow, if this user goes and logs into another device which changes the IP to, let's say, some other subnet, right, 12.1232, so that policy will still apply to this user because the policy is using the user ID feature to be enforced on this user, right? All the rules that apply to this user would apply across the board, wherever this user will log in using his user name and password, all the credentials, right? So that is user ID. Then you have the content ID. Now it inspects and prevents malicious payloads, protecting against malware and exploits in real time. Now for all this to improve, you would have obviously the SSL offloading, so that the firewall can decrypt the HTTPS or SSL traffic and then look into the payload for the content of the payload, and then identify if there is any malicious traffic or any malware, right, or exploits in real time basis. So that is the content ID. Then you have the URL filtering. This feature evaluates the HTTP and the HTTPS traffic and against a set of URLs, like blocking or allowing access to websites based on categorized content. With this foundational understanding, now let's dive into the detailed deployment scenarios. Now Palo Alto network firewalls can be deployed in various scenarios, each tailored to meet the specific security requirements. And today we will cover five primary deployment scenarios. Those are these five. Number one is the perimeter security. Then we will discuss the internal segmentation. Then you have the data center security. After that, the cloud security and the remote workforce. We have almost seen all of this in the course itself, or we will be seeing all of this deployment scenarios. So moving ahead, first one is the primary security. Sorry, the perimeter security. All right. So in this deployment scenario, the Palo Alto network firewalls are positioned at the edge of the network. For example, I'd say this will be your firewall, okay, and then it will directly connect to the ISP and what do you say, infrastructure, okay, ISP infrastructure, and then this firewall would have the total control of the traffic that goes in and out of the organization, right? Now it's essential to protect the internal network from potential attacks that originate from the internet. Okay, that's why the firewalls are positioned at the edge of the network, serving as the first line of defense against the external threats. Now we have certain key considerations in this deployment. Now, these are the key considerations that you have to keep in mind. Number one is the high availability. You should deploy the firewall in a HA fashion to ensure redundancy. This means having two firewalls operating in active standby modes to avoid downtime, or maybe active also. So you would have two firewalls, firewall 1, firewall 2 connected to each other, going to the ISP like this, and then maybe you are connected to a switch here, right? And then from here you have the access layer switches. Then on those access layer switches you will have the endpoints connected, right? So these will be your endpoint. Like that, you should have a HA configured. Then you have the SSL decryption. Next consideration, many attacks are transmitted over SSL and TLS, enabling SSL decryption on the firewall to inspect this traffic for malicious content while ensuring the compliance with data privacy regulations. Now this is also important to implement certain features of the next gen firewall, like the user ID, user ID, the app ID, right? So you need the firewall has the total picture over the traffic that is passing through, whether it's encrypted or unencrypted. Next consideration would be threat prevention. Implementing the threat prevention profiles to automatically block known vulnerabilities and exploit as traffic is analyzed, because this is kind of a DB or a database that is maintained by the Palo Alto networks, and they keep on updating this with the known vulnerabilities and the exploits that come in real time. All right, and they will update this database frequently. Next one is the application control. Now apply the application layer policies to allow or restrict applications based on their risk levels rather than merely their ports and protocols, right? So based on the higher the risk is, you would apply the application layer policies to either allow or restrict the applications. Let's move on ahead. The next thing is the internal segmentation. This is the another deployment type, internal segmentation. Now key strategies for this also we will discuss. But as organizations grow, there is a risk of threats moving laterally within the network. Now what do I mean by this? Now till until now you have seen something called a north south traffic. Like you would see, this is your trust network and this is your untrust network. All right, so this is your ISP or the internet. This is called the untrust, right? So we call this as the north and the south network. I mean south movement, north south movement. So we are controlling this as of now, right? In and out. Now you might also have east west traffic, so east west traffic is also there, right? So for example, you have what do you say, in the same zone you would have some communication happening. You can call that as east west traffic, or intrazone also, intrazone both. Okay, so the key strategies would be the zone based policies, micro segmentation, and logging and monitoring. Now if you talk about the zone based policies, now when you deploy firewalls between different internal segments or zones like finance, HR, and IT, enforcing the strict rules for communication between those zones is one of the key strategies. All right, between the different segmentations, sorry, between the different zones. Now after that is the micro segmentation that we are going to talk about. In a virtualized or cloud environment, utilize micro segmentation to isolate specific workloads, thus securing them from potential lateral movements of threat, right? So we'll do micro segmentation of your internal networks as well, and then you can also obviously control the traffic uh, to and fro to that segment. And on top of that, you should also mention about the logging and monitoring, like monitor the inter-zone traffic in real time with logging features, which can help in identifying the suspicious behavior or policy violations quickly. So this is one of the key strategies in deploying the internal segmentation. Next, sorry, the what do you say, the internal segmentation, obviously the deployment. And then you have the next deployment type, which is the data center security. I think we have seen this kind of deployment, but if you just discuss this, let's just discuss this. This would be like, as organizations centralize critical data and application in data centers, it is essential to ensure these assets are protected from unauthorized access and threat. Obviously, the data center is is a place where you have all your data and all your traffic passing through, and this has to be secured, obviously, on top priority, right? And you also have considerations to take in picture for data center deployment. That would be all these four: the workload protection, automation, threat intelligence, and integration with the cloud services. Now let's talk about the workload protection. Use Palo Alto Networks Firewall to enforce security policies for virtualized workloads, ensuring that each workload has the appropriate level of security based on its sensitivity. For example, I mean, in DC, you will obviously have the virtualized environment. I mean, you would have lots of virtual server, lots of applications deployed on it. So you would have to consider those workloads, and based on that, you have to um, have security on its sensitivity level. Next is the automation. This is the implementation of the automation features like the next generation firewalls APIs to enable dynamic security policies that adjust based on workload placement or other environmental changes. Now you can automate, obviously, using the API for making API calls to the next gen firewall, that is Palo Alto, and you can make dynamic security policies that will adjust based on the workload placement. Now next one is the threat intelligence. Leverage threat intelligence services integrated with the firewall to detect and respond to real-time exploits that may target data center resources. So you do have this option to leverage to in real time, right? You can respond to exploits. Integration with the cloud services. If you are utilizing hybrid cloud environments, ensure your firewall can extend protections across both on-premises and cloud infrastructure. That means if you have some services in AWS and some you have on-premises in the DC, and maybe some you have in the cloud, which is GCP. So ensure your firewall can extend protection across both on-premise and the cloud infrastructure. You do have options to deploy firewall on AWS as well as GCP. So you would kind of do the deployment everywhere so that you can protect all the resources and the cloud infrastructure, whether it's in on-premise or the cloud infrastructure. Now, next deployment type is the cloud security deployment. Now, the options that you have here is you have the virtual firewalls, you have the consistent policies, and then you should have the visibility and compliance. Now, with many organizations migrating to the cloud services, maintaining a robust security posture has never been more critical. Now, Palo Alto Firewall networks offer a range of solutions tailored for cloud security, right? So we will discuss a couple of them here, which is the first one is the virtual firewalls. Deploy Palo Alto's virtual firewalls directly with cloud environments like the AWS. You have the Azure, and you can also deploy this. Sorry, Azure, and you can also deploy this in the GCP and maybe all other like Oracle and all those stuff, right? You can do that. Next is the consistent policies. And ensure that security policies are consistent across both on-prem and cloud environments to avoid security gaps. Application usage and data protection policies should be enforced uniformly everywhere. Alright, so ensure that there are no gaps in the security policies which are made for the on-prem as well as for the cloud environment. Okay, then the third deployment option, visibility and compliance. You have to utilize the firewall to gain visibility over cloud resources and traffic flows, ensuring compliances with data protection regulations such as you have the GDPR and then you have the HIPAA, right? So you have to make sure you are complying with all these regulations. All right, and the last deployment is the remote workforce. We have seen that as well. It's like you have the fire, I mean, the remote workforce scenario. This is called the remote workforce scenario. With the increase in remote work, providing secure access to corporate resources is very essential, right? Palo Alto Networks provide several options for ensuring that a remote access is both secure and efficient. Now we will talk about the deployment tactics for the remote workforce. First of all, you have the global protect. Yes, use the global protect to provide secure VPN access for remote users, ensuring that all internet traffic is routed through the corporate firewall irrespective of the user location. So what I mean is that you have the firewall in the DC, right? You have this is the common deployment. What happens is you have a DC. Let's say you have a DC in LA, and there is a user somewhere around internet, and he is connected his laptop where you have the global protect installed, right? And then you connect through the global protect, you make a tunnel obviously with this firewall. So you will have the agent here installed, the global protect agent, and through that you will create a tunnel, and then there it may be the same interface or maybe other interface that connects to the internet. You can have any scenario. The traffic would come through the tunnel and then pass through like this to the internet. So you have the policy which is enforced here, right? That what do you say, it depends how the organization is going to implement this kind of setup. Either you can have the encrypt all, which means the internet traffic will also go to the DC and then go back after the policy is enforced, or you can have the internet traffic go from the client directly to the ISP, and then the particular applications that the remote user is going to access will pass through the tunnel and come to the DC, and from DC it will go to that application, or maybe some server farm is there where that application is lying, right? So that is one scenario, which is the global protect. Okay, then you have the user ID integration. This is very critical in this case. With the user ID you have the capability to enforce granular security policies based on user identity and role. This will enhance the user experience while maintaining security. This is one of the top what do you say features, and this will help a lot in the granular security policies, implementing the granular security policies. Next, that we want to talk about is the threat prevention for remote access users. Now, for anybody who's connecting remotely, so if we want to implement the threat prevention on remote access connections to protect against malware and phishing attacks targeting remote employees. Then you have the seamless user experience as well, right? Ensure that the remote access solution is easy to use for employees, promoting adoption while maintaining a high level of security. Yeah, so that was the different kinds of what do you say deployment scenarios that we have in the Palo Alto Firewall Networks Firewall. You have seen all of it today, and we have discussed in brief what all of those are and what all the tactics and the what do you say the things that you keep in mind, right, before implementing such uh, deployment of the Palo Alto Firewall. So, in conclusion, Palo Alto Networks Firewall offers versatile deployment scenarios that can be tailored for different security needs across various environments. Whether you need perimeter security, you need the internal segmentation, or the data center protection, or the cloud security, or even for the secure access for a remote workforce, Palo Alto Networks has the capability to enhance your network security. So that would be all for this lecture, and I hope today you learned something new, and that would be all. And I will see you in the next lecture. Till then, bye bye and take care.